Now look, I don't even know if the Raid Area 51 thing is still a thing. I was reading this morning and they're talking about how they're doing this alien stock festival instead of raiding a military base. However, within the last 4 or so days, I have seen a resurgence of Area 51 memes on Pinterest, so I said, hey, I'm gonna be trendy and make an Area 51 themed project. And the best news is, this project is for anyone and everyone, even if you can't get your mom to give you a ride to the desert, to the middle of nowhere, to Area 51. I've got you covered. So I present you with an alternative. Make your own aliens. Audiences love aliens. So yes, that is right, we're going to be making our own aliens. We're going to be papier-mâchéing them. So let's Naruto run right into this project. So papier-mâché is actually really easy, and I'm going to give you all the tips you need. First is materials. We just need flour, water, paper, and a form. Flour and water, those are pretty straightforward. Just make sure you aren't using self-rising flour because that would probably get weird pretty quick. As far as paper, in an ideal world you would use newspaper, but my family doesn't get the paper and I needed to get this filmed in time, so I opted for construction paper. And I was actually really happy with how it turned out for this project. Thicker paper doesn't work well for intricately detailed projects, but an alien head is a simple shape and thicker paper meant less layers. And for our form, we will just use a balloon. So the first step is to prep our form by inflating our balloon. I set it on a cup as like a stand for while we work on it. Next, we need to mix our papier-mâché glue, which is just water and flour. I like to do 1 part flour to 2 parts water. So I dumped a cup of flour in my bowl and added the 2 cups of water little by little, mixing in between. Some people like to whisk it together. I don't think it makes a big difference. Just stir with a spoon or your hand until all the flour clumps are broken up. You can even reach right in with your hand and just squish the clumps to break them. Optionally, you can also add a dash of salt because I've heard that it prevents mold. I haven't had issues with mold on my projects, but this is an easy preventative measure to make sure your projects last. One last thing to do before we actually start papier-mâchéing is to prep our paper. I'll link the paper that I'm using in the description. We're just going to tear it into rough strips. Since this paper is thicker, tearing thinner strips works better, so I just keep tearing and tearing and tearing until I get really thin strips. I would avoid cutting the paper though, because the smooth edges don't lay down as well. The rough, torn edges create a much smoother finish. And that's all the prep we need to do. At this point, we can start papier-mâchéing. Dip your paper strips in the glue mixture and make sure the paper is fully saturated. Because this paper is thicker, you may want to let it soak for 10 seconds or so. Or you can just dip it and coat it with the mixture by running your hands up and down the strip. Either way, once our strip is fully soaked, we do need to remove the excess glue. I like to just run my fingers down the strip and slide the excess glue off. Once we do that, it's time to add the strip to your form. I like to press the strip down by working from one end to the other end, and I push kind of from the middle to the sides as I work my way down the strip. Try to make your strip lay as flat against your form as possible for a better shape. And then we're just going to keep repeating this process and adding more strips. You want to have some overlap between your strips so that way it forms one solid, strong construction. We are going to do 1 layer at a time, so once we get the entire surface of the balloon covered, we will let this layer dry. So just keep covering your project. If you end up with a lot of excess glue on your project, you either need to squeeze more mixture out of your strips before applying, or else you can add a completely dry strip on top to soak in that excess glue. Make sure that that strip does become completely saturated. If you need to, you can add a little more of the glue by dipping your fingers in the glue and just running the glue on top of the strip. So now it's time to let it dry. I played around with several methods for this project, first of which was leaving it sit on the cup. This works fine, but the disadvantage with this is the part against the cup takes longer to dry and it might mold to the lip of the cup. A better alternative is to hang the balloon to dry. I used yarn to hang it from a tension rod in the shower, and I put a paper towel underneath it to catch any glue that runs off. If glue does run off, it won't clog your drains because it's just flour and water, but I would suggest rinsing it down with plenty of water afterwards so that way it doesn't gum up your drains. My favorite option to let it dry is to hang it outside in the heat if it's still warm where you are. It was a scorcher the day that this was drying, so I hung it outside to speed up the drying process. While your project is drying, store your excess glue in an airtight container, like a mason jar. Once the first layer dries completely, you can add the next layer. It's really important though to make sure it's completely dry before you start the next layer, so that way your project doesn't mold or lose strength. So I let my project dry overnight, and then the next day I came back to do the second layer. Now you may notice here that I have something down on my work surface. I would recommend doing this. It's not too bad to clean up the glue if it does get on your surface, but it's so much easier if you have something down. So what I did was I took a trash bag, inside outed it, and worked on top of that. And when I was done, I right side outed it and just stuck it into my trash can to be used as a trash bag. So let's actually add our second layer. You'll want to remix your glue so that way it's not separated, and I just swirled it in a container. And then I got back to paper macheing. I like to use a different color of paper for each layer so that I can easily tell where I have paper macheed and where I haven't. Again, let this layer dry completely before moving on to the next steps. I found 2 layers of the construction paper made it really strong, so I didn't do any more layers. Once our project is completely dry, I just cut a slip in the top part of the balloon, in that really stretchy part, and I let the air out slowly. Your alien head will hold its form. You can leave the balloon inside if you want, but I pulled mine out just because. Last of all, I'm going to paint my alien head. I suggest using a lighter shade of paper for your final layer so that you don't need as many layers of paint. I opted for a fun neon green and painted 2 coats. I love these little acrylic paints from Walmart because they are so cheap and dry super fast. Also, they're a breeze to clean up. Just use a little water and scrub it off. Don't take this as a guarantee, especially for clothing, but I've never gotten these paints on a hard surface that I couldn't easily clean it off of with just a little bit of water. To let it dry, I just set it on a cup outside and turned it over once the top part was dry. I don't mind getting a little paint on my fingers because it's so easy to clean up, but if you want to avoid that, paint just one half of your project at a time and let each half dry before painting the other half. Lastly, I needed to add a face. I used black paint to freehand some eyes, but if you want a more consistent look or you aren't that artsy, you could opt for printing out an eye template and using it as a stencil. You could even add the eyes with just a regular old Sharpie. Once more, we're going to let this dry and then I'll show you the finished results. And now we are done. You can leave your alien as is. I think it's kind of fun if you leave a little hole as a mouth. You can get a broom, cut the hole bigger. Unfortunately, this isn't one of the fancy brooms that like stands by itself, so you can make yourself an alien pal. You can hide it to scare people. Ah! Or you can use it as a photo prop into a photo shoot. Lots of options. You can do just about whatever you want with your alien. You could even paper mache him an entire body. The one thing I can't help you with is bringing your alien to life. Unfortunately, I'm not too big on the whole Frankenstein-like bringing monsters to life thing. So if that's your thing, I mean, best of luck, but I don't have a tutorial for how to animate this thing. But regardless, you now have your very own Crafters Autonomous Certified Alien, all without raiding Area 51. You're welcome. Hey, thanks for watching this project. This was a fun one to film, and I have some more paper mache projects coming up, so definitely come back to the channel to watch for those to be released. But in the meantime, let me know what you think about this little alien head. Let me know in the comments below, and of course, don't forget to smash the like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and happy crafting. My alien's just chillin'.